time as the Rebbe's second couple of emissaries to the state of California. At that time, when we grew up, we didn't have many Jewish friends. There wasn't a Jewish school, especially not in Simcha Monica, so we used to travel for hours to school and back to the city, to Long Beach. I don't know, Northern California to us, and up until today, because I left many years ago from the LA life. So to me, Northern California is as hick town as can be.
It's also hick town for me, by the way.
It is?
It's hick town for me also.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I definitely admire Rabbi Landau for moving out to somewhere out in Northern California. To me, that's further than Sumi, Ukraine. Yeah. We grew up in Northern California, watched it in Southern California, watched it grow, watched the Jewish community expand in all different ways. And then I went off to yeshiva. Actually, I left home at a very young age because there wasn't a cheder or full-time Jewish school for me. When I was 9 years old, my parents sent me to Montreal to go to school, and I spent 3 years living with my grandparents in Montreal. And then when I was already bar mitzvah, I went to yeshiva. I came back to Los Angeles to be in yeshiva, but I still wasn't really home. I was in yeshiva. So yeah, that was my deprived childhood. That's what you wanted to hear about. I grew up in yeshiva mainly. The Chabad yeshiva system is very interesting. When we finish what would be, I guess, 12th grade or the first year of college, so to say, the yeshiva in New York, the central yeshiva in New York, sends the groups of boys to all over the world, and their mission is to reinforce the Chabad yeshivas that are all over the place. So in our class, for example, there were 80 boys, and we were split up in groups of 10 or 6 or 8, and sent off to Australia, Argentina, at that time Venezuela, Caracas, and in the United States as well, to Los Angeles, to Miami, etc. Wherever there are Chabad yeshivas, our class was basically put into groups. I think Rabbi Landau probably did the same.
Yeah, I got lucky. I went to Miami.
You got lucky. You went to Miami. Okay. So I wasn't as lucky, or maybe I was more lucky. I don't know. I was a group of 6 boys, and we were sent to Kharkov, Ukraine. And this was in 1995. It was just a few years after Perestroika, after the fall of communism. And things were really haywire then. It was the wild, wild west. But we came out, they started a yeshiva in Kharkov, Ukraine, which is the second largest city in Ukraine. And we came to basically reinforce the yeshiva, to be there for the boys. Now, we didn't speak a word of Russian or Ukrainian. And it was, the first few months were it was exciting. Just to give a little bit of a, we're in the middle of the 9 days, which is supposedly a time of mourning for the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. But in Hasidic spirit, we try to lighten up the atmosphere, not be too gruesome. So they tell a joke about a Jew in the time of communism. He's an elderly Jew, in his 90s, and he's sitting in the park, and he has a dictionary, a Hebrew-Russian dictionary, and he's studying Hebrew, which was against the law. And a KGB officer passes by and says, "Excuse me, sir, this is illegal. You're not allowed to be studying Hebrew." So he says, "Yeah, but I need this. I can't." He says, "No, sir, it's illegal. You're an elderly person. I don't want to, but if you're gonna study Hebrew, especially in the park in public, we're gonna arrest you and you could be sent to Siberia for 10 years." Okay. The next day, the officer is walking through the park and he sees this Yid. He's sitting with his dictionary studying Hebrew. He says, "Sir, I told you yesterday." He says, "Yes, but officer, I need this. I need this. You can't." "No, sir, I'm giving you the last warning." Okay. The following day, the scene repeats itself. Finally, the officer tells this man, he says, "Sir, you realize that you're going to be sent to Siberia. You're going to be arrested. Tell me, why is this so important to you?" So he says, "You have to understand, I'm 90 plus years. I'm not going to live forever. And when I go up to heaven, I'm going to have to interact with everyone. I need to speak Hebrew." So the officer laughs. He says, "And who says you're going to heaven? Maybe you're going the other direction." So he says, "Oh, Russian, I speak fluently." So jokes aside, in 1995, when we came out here, that wasn't a joke. It really was. I mean, but the one thing which stuck out is that the Jewish people who had gone through 70, 80 years of communist rule, who were oppressed in all different types of ways, at that time, there was this vacuum of just people. You just had to make an announcement that there's going to be, Hanukkah, and the streets were packed. Thousands of people would come out. Thousands and thousands of Jewish people would come out to anything. They're thirsting knowledge, just to know something about Judaism, just to hear about something about anything. So in this yeshiva, when they opened the yeshiva, and we came out, and we had students who would be learning in the university, and then they would come after studies at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They would come to study with us for hours, starting with Aleph Bet, literally starting from Aleph Bet and going all the way through. By the end of the year, some of these students were learning Mishnah and Talmud, and they were just totally into it, thirsting. Many of them today are rabbis throughout Ukraine and Russia. And I spent 2 years in Kharkov, then went back to New York. But those 2 years were they left an extreme impression on me. And I always felt that I need to go back, because it was such an incredible feeling to be able to inspire people, and people were just, they just couldn't stop. They needed to hear more and more and more. It was really incredible. The one thing that we find even today, the Jews that lived here all along, they're very intense. They're very real. So if they're an atheist, they're an atheist. They mean it, 100%. If they want to keep Torah, mitzvahs, they want to keep kosher, they're going to do it all the way. There's no 50%. They're really intense, and they take on a project. This is it. This is what they're doing. So it's sometimes it's difficult, but it's very rewarding when you actually interact with them and I can definitely say that it's something that inspired me then, and probably the catalyst that got me here.
Amazing.
After I got married, the challenge was more to get my wife to come. So,
was that something on dates that you discussed that you wanted to open up a Chabad?
Actually, it's a funny thing. Actually, before we went out, somebody told my wife that obviously it must have been one of my friends who somebody from her family spoke to. I don't know, but somebody said that whoever is going to marry this guy better be ready that they're moving to Ukraine to live in Ukraine. I never said that. It wasn't my condition. But after like 2 or 3 dates, and we started discussing in general, shluchas or whatever, and I was bringing up all kinds of ideas, and my wife was like, "Oh, well, you mean you're open to, moving to California? Oh, I thought this is like a set deal. I thought you're going to Ukraine." And I was like, "Oh, you ready to go to Ukraine? Oh, okay, good. It's good to know."
So when you decided that you're going to move to Ukraine, Rabbi Levitansky, your parents were supportive? Your parents weren't, you're moving so far away? I think out of all the Levitanskys, you're the farthest in terms of geography. Is that
actually, believe it or not, I have a sister who is in Kharkov, who moved out a few months before we came as boys.
Wow.
There are a few families of shluchim in Kharkov. It's a very, very large city, and so she beat me to it. I have family in Australia as well, but I guess Australia is not as exotic as Ukraine. When I decided to move to Sumi, Ukraine, my father told me, and if you knew my father, you would appreciate it. And he appreciated crazy people, crazy in a good way, as in, I don't know. He used to say, "I'm a suganer." Meshuga means you think out of the box, or you do things that aren't the norm. So he said, if you think that you're crazy to move out to Sumi, Ukraine in 1994, in 2004, he says, when I moved out to California, it was 1967. It was 10 times more crazy. And the fact is that, that's the truth. When my father moved out in 1967 to California, most of, mainly my mother's family, who were part of the Chabad system, they were rabbis within Chabad, and they told my father, 3 months and you're back. Wow. There's no way that you're gonna survive in a place like California, Los Angeles, which is a desert of Judaism. There's zero there. There's no way that a young couple just married is gonna survive more than 3 months. And that they moved out in Elul, in the month of Elul, which was right after their wedding, which is a month before Rosh Hashanah. And then for Simchas Torah, my father decided that he wanted to be by the Rebbe in New York. So he flew back to New York for Simchas Torah. And when he showed up, his relatives were like, you see, you're back. You didn't make it. They were just so sure that it was impossible to be, to live as a observant Jew in Los Angeles in 1967. So that's part of our craziness. I'll tell you a little bit about our craziness. I got a stamp of being crazy when we were living here almost 5 years. So one of the biggest challenges was and is for many of the foreigners that you can't stay in Ukraine for more than 3 months without a visa. So if you get a worker's visa or a religious visa or any kind of visa, it can last up to a year, but then you have to renew it. And in order to renew it, you need to leave the country. And if you don't leave the country, then you have to do all kinds of things and jump through all kinds of loopholes and to renew your visa. So this was part of our challenge. Every 3, 6 months, a year, changing status, getting a new visa. The laws kept on changing, the government kept on changing, and every day it's something new. It wasn't fun. So after 5 years of doing this, the lawyer who was helping us tells me, there's a law in Ukraine that allows for you to apply for residency. If you're living here for 5 years and you own property and you have other different reasons why you need to stay in Ukraine, you basically apply for residency, and then it's up to the local visa office. The head of the visa office in your county has the discretion to either give it to you or deny it for no reason. They basically, you have the right to apply, they have the right to deny or approve. It's a one-time try. So he says, you have nothing to lose, why don't you just try? And he says, if you're already going to try, so don't just, fill out an application. Do it, the good old Russian way. Go through the governor's office, because I'm officially the chief rabbi of the city, and I have connections with the mayor and the governor. And so go through the governor's office and have them put in a good word for you, and, whatever. So to make a short story long, we basically did this whole thing, and after a few weeks, we get a denial. We were denied residency, and part of it is that if you want an explanation, come to the office to get an explanation. So nothing to lose. I went to the office and I meet with the head of the visa office. It was actually a woman. And she says, actually, usually we don't send out that message. If you want an explanation, come into the office, because we're not obligated to explain anything. If we denied it, we denied it. Have a good day. But because you applied through the governor's office and so on, so I felt that it was only right that I give an explanation. So I want to just explain to you why I denied. He says, see, it's my discretion. I have to decide whether you get the residency or not. And I read through your application and I read all of the information in it. And after I finished reading everything, I still remained with one main question. Why would somebody from Los Angeles move to Sumi, Ukraine with his entire family and want to live here and is asking for residency? It doesn't make any sense. She says, and I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it, and I came to the conclusion that there's only two answers to this question. Either you are into espionage, some kind of spy for a foreign country, or you're just not normal. You're not with it. And we don't need spies and we don't need crazy people. So my conscience doesn't allow me to sign off on the paper. At that point, I called my father actually, and I said I was officially stamped a Meshuggah. I was officially stamped crazy by the visa office. So I am, I could put a
badge of honor. I love it.
Yeah, I get that bar.
So Rabbi Levitansky, before even talking about Jewish life in Sumi, could you just talk about life in Sumi? What does it mean? Is there a lot of poverty? What's the history of that city? I know it's right by the border. I'll pull it up on the screen, but if you could just share geographically.
Okay, pull it up on the screen, and we'll give a little bit of a history here. I'm sure there's somebody here who is or has relatives from Ukraine. Yeah. Must be. If there's 10 Jews here, somebody has grandfather, grandmother, uncle, aunt, cousin. Somebody has somebody in Ukraine. I see some hands going up. No. Yeah. So Ukraine was one of the centers of Jewish life before the Second World War for hundreds of years. and is the main bed of Hasidic life. Hasidim basically lived in Ukraine and Belarus, etc. Okay. Sumi, Ukraine, is on the border with Russia. We're right on the border. And actually, Sumi was never a Jewish city. It was never Jewish before the war, and certainly not after the war. I'm talking about the First World War. During the Tsar's times, the only Jews that were allowed to live in Sumi were professionals. So in order to work in Sumi, you had to be a doctor, a lawyer. You had to have some kind of high-class profession, which was, I would say, a good percentage of those Jewish people were not so observant, or weren't the Hasidim of old that were living in the Shtetlach. After the communists took over in 1923 and on, the KGB, or the NKVD at the time, set up a central office in Sumi, Ukraine, specifically because it's not on the main road. It's off to the side. It's not noticeable, so to say. We don't get any visitors here, literally. I mean, we almost never hear English or foreign language on the street or anything like that. It's totally out of the way. The airport is 4.5 hours drive from where we are.
Is that in Kiev? Where is that?
Everything all around is farmland, basically. So they set up a main office, headquarters, for 3 large counties: Kharkov, Chernigov, and Poltava. All 3 counties, are you getting it on the screen?
Yeah, I'll get it for you.
All 3 counties, Kharkov, Chernigov, and Poltava, were all 3 very large Jewish communities in the cities of Chernigov, Poltava, and Kharkov, and also in the Shtetlach surrounding those cities. You're talking about Jewish history over the past 200 years, just saturated with Jewish history.
Wow.
In one of the Shtetlach, which is in the Sumi county, in Gluchov, there were 45 shuls, 45 synagogues in this one city, which has today about 100,000 people, and I don't think it ever had more than that. At the time, before the First World War, there were 60% Jewish people living. 60% of the city was Jewish. The city had 4 schools that were government schools that they taught in Yiddish. Yiddish was a national language, saturated with Jewish history. Sumi itself, the city where I am, was never Jewish, and when the communists took over and they made it their headquarters, you could imagine that anybody who had any connection to Jewish life was not showing up in Sumi. That wasn't the place for them. I actually met elderly Chassid in Kfar Chabad in Israel, Rabbi David Chain, who lived in Chernigov during the war, and he was part of the underground yeshiva that was running from shtetl to shtetl, avoiding the KGB. And I asked him I wanted to know if he can give me any background history of Sumi, or anything around. And he says, where are you? And I said, well, I'm in Sumi. And he says, Sha. I said,
oh, wow.
Sha, what? I mean, what is? I don't know if anyone knows Yiddish here. Mizok nicht dem Wort. You don't say that word. So I said, which word? It's the name of the city. He says, yes, the name of the city, just that word is enough to inflict fear on someone like me.
Wow.
You don't mention that word. Just the name Sumi is enough to put pachad, to put fear on me. And he explained that they basically avoided Sumi like the plague. I mean, they literally did not get near the city. I actually undug archives in the main archives of our city of correspondence between the headquarters of the Sumi NKVD, the Sektia, the Jewish section of the NKVD, corresponding with the Kharkov NKVD in Yiddish. This is paperwork going back and forth in Yiddish, where the Kharkov, the head of the Kharkov NKVD wants to know how many Jews participated in the Seder on Pesach, how many Jews ate matzah for Pesach, how many Jews only ate matzah on Pesach. These are types of questions, like a questionnaire, that they had to answer and give all kinds of feedback of what they were following.
So you're saying it instilled fear because it was so anti-religious, anti-Jewish?
Right. Anybody who wanted to keep anything, who was any semblance of Judaism, was not spending time in Sumi. There was a shul. There was a shul in the city up until 1927. 1923, it was closed down by the KGB. The small minyan of about 25 or 30 people who petitioned Moscow that they should reopen it, and they obliged, and they reopened it until 1927 when they shut it down again.
Wow.
And then from then it was closed, and we only got it back. Oh, here we go. We only got it back in 1999.
The Chernigov that you said, the Chassid in Israel that you met, he was in this city to the top left?
Right there. Chernigov, Poltava, and Kharkov. And this whole chunk of Ukraine and Russia on the other side, Kursk, you don't really see it, but Kursk region, this was all controlled by the headquarters in Sumi.
So Sumi was like the headquarters of communism, the headquarters of Yevsektia, which is the Jewish establishment of the NKVD.
Correct.
And NKVD, could you explain what that is? Is that the
KGB? Just different, just a different acronym. Today it's called the SBO. It's all the same. It's the same people, just a different plaque on the door.
I'll just pull up another picture here. These are ones you circled. Are you able
to... So here Sumi is on the bottom, and this is all this Sumskaya county, kind of. Putivol, Gluchov, Kralevets, Rabbi Lando, you never heard of Kralevets?
No, I didn't.
Kralevets, this is a Chabad town, very saturated with Chabad many Chabad families. Avram Fried, famous Chabad singer, is married to Krasniansky. The entire Krasniansky family is from Kralevets.
Wow.
Their great-grandfather was killed by the Nazis in Kralevets.
So this is on the Russian side of the border, or the Ukrainian?
No. This is all on the Ukrainian side. The Russian border is this line,
right,
on the right, that goes just next to Gluchov, and further up. So Kralevets, kind of top, Romny, and Hadich.
Oh,
you see Hadich on the bottom left? Okay, Hadich is where the first Chabad Rebbe is buried, the Alter Rebbe who wrote the Tanya, and we are actually the closest community to the Alter Rebbe's resting place.
It's always been a dream of mine to go visit the Alter Rebbe's resting place, so maybe I'll come by for a visit.
Not a road. It's just what we call whatever, Kvitzas Aderech.
Wow.
Okay.
Rabbi Levitansky, to speak about life, is it very poor in Sumi? Is there? I know it's right on the border. So is the economic? What's the economy like? Is there constant war? Is there constant fear?
Okay, constant war. The problem with Ukraine is that we're constantly unstable. Nothing to do with war or no war. Um, this is all my theory also, so I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, Russia just doesn't want Ukraine to be stable. So at any given moment, whenever the government finally figures it out and they stabilize themselves and they start to, to grow economically and something, so somebody throws in something, there's re-elections or a war or something happens and it just throws everything into chaos. And this has been basically repeating itself over and over and over again since I'm here, and beforehand as well. So poverty, you know what? When we say poverty, people think, I think of like Africa or people who are, the people are starving. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. First of all, most people have their dachas, their agarod, which means that now, for example, this part of this time of the year, everybody's planting and canning and preserving for the winter. They have potatoes and carrots, and everybody stocks up all summer long so that they have food for the winter. And there's another thing which is very beautiful in a sense, and it's one of the things which is an outcome of communism. Communism wasn't completely bad. There's a lot of camaraderie. So people are very, they help each other in everything. And there's a lot of bartering that goes on. So if I have a lot of cucumbers and you have a lot of tomatoes, then, we barter, and I give you some tomatoes and you give me cucumbers, and then everybody has everything. There's a lot of that goes on without any money exchange. On the other hand, it's very much like third world countries where you have people who are extremely wealthy. They have so much that they don't even know what to do with it. And they're just accumulating, and it's mainly because they're either in the government or, it's a lot of corruption. And then there's the rest of the 98% of the people who are barely making it. A very common thing on the street is if you ask somebody, how are you doing? How's life? They'll say, I'm surviving. And this is it's not a joke. It's meant in kind of in a serious way. I'm just surviving. So people are barely keeping their head above water, and that's basically where it is. But they're constantly doing it. There's also a lot of prestige. People are not uneducated. Most of, I would say, a good 90 or more percent of the population are highly educated. Professors, doctors, lawyers, but they're educated on a very, very high level. So it's very difficult for them also to kind of accept charity, or say, or even come out and say, I'm needy. I need food. You'll hardly hear that from people. You just have to know. You just have to. A lot of what we do is that we visit people in their homes, and we try to gauge the situation by seeing how they're living at home.
So let me ask you, Rabbi Levitansky, just some questions that are coming in. Just finish the story before of how, so they stamped you as a Meshugana, and how did you end up getting residency when she didn't want to believe you? Like, you had to convince her that
we got residency because my wife proved that she was crazy, and she gave birth in Ukraine. Up until then, we were going back to LA whenever she had to give birth. We were going a few months beforehand back to LA, and it was, first of all, there's a lot of expenses, and it wasn't so simple insurance-wise, and it was getting all complicated. And then at one point, my wife said, "That's it, forget it. I'm just gonna, we'll just do it. We'll try. We'll see what happens." At that time, actually, what convinced her was because in Kharkov, which is a 3-hour drive from here, they opened up a new clinic, which was, I can't say on American standards or European standards, but a lot better than the rest of the stuff that we see around here. And so she basically said, you know, let's try. And she had our youngest 2 daughters were born in Ukraine,
Wow.
which basically gives us an automatic residency because my daughters are Ukrainian.
Right. How many children do you have, Rabbi Levitansky?
We have 9 children.
So another question that's coming in is, how's your family surviving financially? Like, how are you? Is it hard to raise funds for your community and for your family?
It is one of the more difficult challenges because we are funded, I would say, 95% or more from outside of Ukraine. So a lot of what we do is we have to apply for grants from different organizations or reach out by email or make phone calls and rely a lot on outside help. And since 2014, when the war broke out between Russia and Ukraine and the bank system collapsed for about 2 years, and now it's only trying to get itself back in order. It's become a lot more difficult because we are basically a cash society. Credit cards and checks and all those things just don't exist. You need hard cash.
Wow.
And in order to take cash out of the bank, it starts getting complicated legally. And to do it illegally is not an option. I don't want to end up over here anywhere. So it's very challenging. But Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of blessings from above, and we try to do more than just survive. Wow. Let's say that.
So tell us, Rabbi Levitansky, some of your blessings that you're talking about from above. What was the when you moved to Sumi? What was the response? What was the interaction you've had with Jews? How did you meet them? You just pulled off a menorah lighting and they all came. Can you speak about the Jewish life there and your community?
Okay, so when we moved out to Sumi is in contrast to Kharkov, or my 2 years that I lived in a much larger city with many Jews and all stripes. And Sumi is much smaller. The Jewish community and the Jewish people who live here are coming from a whole different background. Most of the Jews that live here are children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of staunch communists. We're talking the real thing, the real McCoy. Many of them till today believe that communism was the right way and it was great, and why do we need this American capitalist thing? And it's just very, very difficult for them to accept. A whole different picture and type of Jewish community. When we came here in 2004, it was Tishrei, it was Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I did not have a minyan. And then Hanukkah was coming, and I wanted to put up a menorah in the square, because where I come from in Simcha Hanukkah, we have 30 menorahs all over the city. So why not? And the head of the community came to me and he said, you can't do that. You don't realize where you are. This is not America. This is Sumi. This is Ukraine. Put a menorah in the center of the city, it's going to cause anti-Semitism. It's going to be a war. It's going to, to my mazel, to my luck, there was an overthrowing of the government just then in September, October, November of 2004. It was called the Orange Revolution, where the Ukrainians were out in the streets demonstrating to overthrow the old government. It was the beginning of a follow-up of many things, which led up to the the war in 2014. But I wasn't involved politically. I didn't understand the ramifications at all. I just knew that in the center, in the square, there were thousands of people rioting every night. And this is where I'm planning on putting a menorah. And the head of the community was trying to put things into perspective and trying to explain to me that this is not going to go down well. And let's, put it off for 20 years from now. In the end, he said there's a Jewish man who is the second to the governor in the county office. He holds a very high position. Let's go to speak to him and let's see what he says. Whatever he says, that's what we'll do. I don't know who this man is. And okay, fine. If that's what it is, that's what it is. So he makes a meeting with the head of he's basically the head of the county council, basically. And I come to the building. There were 3 lines of, you guys could appreciate this now, because I don't know what's going on in your city, but we see pictures of stuff coming out of America now. There were 3 lines of police, with riot police with shields standing in front of the government building, and in order to get in. And I had to give them my name and my passport, and they sent up a message. Anyway, eventually they let me in, and I met with Mark Abramovich Berfman. He was very prestigious. We put on tefillin in his office, and I said, I want to put a menorah in the square. What do you think? And he doesn't know what a menorah is. He doesn't know what Hanukkah is. He doesn't know anything. And he says, okay, you explained it to me. I got it. But let me tell you what's going on here. So this couch in my office, I've been sleeping here for the past 3 days. The 3 lines of police outside my office just makes it 15 minutes more for the crowd to come into this building if they want to. And I know that, and the police know that, and everybody knows that. So, I don't know how I can help you. I don't have much power right now. I can't make any decisions. But there is another Jew who holds a very high position in the city council, and this is really a question for the city. So why don't we call him, speak to him, and see if he can help you with the city council. The only thing is that we're not on good terms. He's on the orange team and I'm on the blue team, and we're not talking with each other. So I'll arrange for the meeting, but we don't speak to each other. And he arranges for this Jew to come to his office, and we meet. There's my beautiful menorah. We met in his office, and he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Menorah in the city, this sounds like a great idea. Just write up a letter, and I'm going to get it approved by the city, and everything's going to be great. And I was all happy, and I ran back to the head of the community. I said, we just have to write up a letter, and everything's going to be great. So the head of the community, who knows this other man from the city, he calls him and he says, what's going on? Well, what kind of letter do we have to write? He says, just write up a letter and say that you want to put the menorah in front of the monument of Shevchenko, which is, I know now, which is like a park area in the center. It's not in the square, but it's off to the side. It's a very nice area, and there's a big monument of Shevchenko, who was a writer, unbeknown to me, was also a very great anti-Semite, and wrote many anti-Semitic things in his time. And this guy says, put up a menorah in front of the monument of Shevchenko. So we write up this letter, we give it in, and a few days later, the mayor calls me on my cell phone. Is this the rabbi? I hear that you're the new rabbi in town. You have to realize this. I guess you guys can understand this. It's like small town, small town. Everybody knows everybody. And I got your letter, and I want to prove this menorah, but I have a few questions. I did my homework. I looked up online what it's all about, and I just have a couple of questions if you could help me out. So I'm like, okay, fine. He says, okay, so first of all, I need to know, is it part of Jewish law that the menorah needs to stand in front of the monument of an anti-Semite? I said, no, not exactly. So is it okay if we kind of move it to a different area? There's another nice park, just outside the square. Would that be okay? I said, yeah, that would be great. Okay, fine. So we're going to have the head architect of the city is going to meet with you tomorrow. You'll go down to the park. You'll pick a nice place, and we'll help you out with this. And anyway, again, to make a short story long, we put up that menorah off to the side of the square for the first time. We had a few hundred people that came out. It was one of the coldest Hanukkahs that I can remember. It was really, really freezing. But many people came out. We went to visit. There was an old woman who was blind. She was in her 80s. And weeks later, we went to meet with her, and we told her that we had a menorah in the city, and she said, I don't believe it. I can't see it. I'm not, I'm blind, but there's no way. I don't believe it. It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. There's no way. You can tell me all you want, but there's no way for me to see it, so I just don't believe it. It's impossible. It was really beautiful, and up until today, every year on Hanukkah, we have menorah. Now it's actually in the center, in the square. It's a nice picture there, with a fire show and all different types of things. And it's a yearly event where the mayor or the governor comes to light the menorah, and it's become part of the city life.
Rabbi Levitansky, do you experience anti-Semitism either at the menorah?
Not what you call anti-Semitism.
Okay, what's the difference? Tell me.
Okay, the difference between Ukrainian anti-Semitism and American or European is that anti-Semitism in general is gauged by actions. So you would have, vandalism or all different types of things happening, or people calling you names or things like that. That does not happen on a general basis. Where I'm here more than 15 years. I haven't been called a name once. But here's the but. Anti-Semitism is part of the blood of the local people. It's literally in their blood, and they can't explain it. They don't even know what it is, but it comes out here and there in a very subtle way. And the only thing which is our mazel or whatever it is that it's not something that's good for them today. So thank God it's not something that they're looking to bring out. But living here for many years, you can kind of understand, especially in a smaller city like Sumi, you can understand the medieval stories of the priest revving up the peasants against the Jews, and getting everybody to make a pogrom. That's something that you can feel. That's something that you can see happening if God forbid, somebody actually decided to leave. Most of the people are very simple. They're very religious, believe it or not. The fall of communism, and everybody just plunged into religion. So people are extremely superstitious and extremely religious, and they don't understand the religion. The main religion here, which is Orthodox, Russian Orthodox or Ukrainian Orthodox, doesn't allow for questions. It's, this is the way it is, and this is what you do. So people just follow. That's what you're meant to do. And if you ask them to explain why they do it, they don't have any clue. And that leads to that type of, God forbid, that type of system where you can just have some leader who is very charismatic, who could just rev everybody up, and these are the people who are at fault, and we have to get them and whatever. So thank God it hasn't been that way. But yeah,
Let me ask you, how do you get kosher? Where do you get your kosher food from?
Baruch Hashem, kosher is much easier today than it was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, it was really doing everything on our own. Today, in most of the larger cities, in Kiev and Dnipropetrovsk and Kharkov and Odessa, most of them have kosher meat and milk and all different types of products, and many factories started allowing for rabbis to come in and give kosher supervision. Things are becoming more available on the market. We get products in from Europe and Israel. So it's become much, 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 much easier. We are in a smaller city, so it's easier for us to kind of do things on our own. We still go to the cows to get milk.
Wow.
It's just healthier, and we don't have to get boxed milk, long shelf milk. So we make all types of things with our milk. And because we live in this community where everybody does things on their own, we join in. So we joke that in America, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is the easiest thing to slap together. It's like, if you don't have anything to make for your kids, you put together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you send them off to school. And over here, we bake the bread ourselves, we make the peanut butter ourselves, and we make the jelly ourselves.
So what would be your comparison to peanut butter and jelly? What's like easy for you?
Delicious. Just try it. It's not very difficult. It's just time consuming.
Wow. Where do your children go to school?
My children go to school. The older ones go to other cities, but until bar mitzvah, they are on the online school. I'm assuming your kids are also on the online school.
Explain to me a little bit about what it is. Now,
the online
Rabbi Levitansky, all kids are on online school. That's the.
Now everybody joined the online school because of Corona.
Years ago.
We're professionals in the online school. So my kids have been on online school now for 15 years. It is an incredible system which was started about 15 years ago and has improved over the years, where the kids basically log in the morning and they are in a classroom with children their age all over the world who are all in the same situation, and their teacher can be anywhere. Our kids actually joined the Hebrew online because of time zone. We're on the Israeli time zone, so it's much easier.
So just to explain to everyone, Rabbi Levitansky, my kids actually go to school in San Francisco, which, depending on the day and traffic, but it usually takes around an hour to get there.
That's like me. I remember that.
So this online school is a Chabad school for children of Chabad families that are in places that don't have a Jewish school. And so there's different time zones depending on where you are, and you join with classmates that are on a similar time zone as you. So Rabbi Levitansky was saying he's on the on the Hebrew version for their time zone.
Right.
Amazing.
So that it actually allows my kids to pick up on Hebrew. My kids are fluent in 4.5 languages. The half being Ukrainian, because in the past 5 years, everything switched from Russian to Ukrainian.
Oh, wow.
It's separate languages. It's like Yiddish and German. It's like very similar, but it's different. And I speak to my kids in Yiddish, and my wife speaks to them in English. And they pick up Russian on the street, and they learn Hebrew in school. So they're fluent in 4 languages, and the Israeli system is also very organized, a little more than the American system. So it's structured. It's an unbelievable learning experience, and it also allows them for social life because they don't have any friends that are their age who are observant.
This elderly lady, Rabbi Levitansky, that's lighting the menorah with your children, is that
correct?
Someone in a senior home, or is that someone you have a relationship with?
No senior homes. People live at home and take care of themselves actually up until 120. I mean, it's incredible. It's another thing about Russian life that you don't see so much in America, where the senior citizens, literally people who are very, who you would expect to see in old age homes or senior homes, etc. They're going shopping and they're sweeping the streets and they're doing all different types of things that you wouldn't expect. A part of what we do, because we're in such a small community, is that we go every week actually to visit people in their homes. We light Shabbos candles with them. We speak to them. We just go from house to house to house to house. And on Hanukkah, on bigger holidays, Purim, we try to reach everybody, every single Jew that we can. Whoever we know, we go to visit them and light the menorah with them in their home at least one time during Hanukkah.
That's incredible. I guess your children are old enough that you take different routes. They go to somehow.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. In this picture, Rabbi Levitansky, it looks like there's a Jewish men's learning club or something going on.
Correct. So now we have, for the past 6 years, we have what's called Kolel Torah. And we have about 20 men who come every morning to put on tefillin, daven a little bit, some more, some less, and then we study for an hour or so, all different types of topics, from Jewish history to Chumash or Mishnayos or Chassidus, Tanya, all different topics. And this is a program which is run throughout Ukraine and Russia. And the curriculum is set up that all of the communities are learning the same topics. They're all learning from the same study book. And then they can also interact with Jewish people in other cities through the computer, through online. They can, in the evening, for example, they can study with other peers.
Wow.
The same topics. They have tests, and then they get a stipend.
Oh wow!
It's a very acceptable thing here for students to receive stipends. So this was one of the ideas of one of our sponsors, to give people a stipend, which allows them to get an income in a respectable way. And they also come and learn and participate. And this has really boosted our community in an unreal, something I could never imagine would happen. Up until 6 years ago, we struggled to have a minyan on Shabbos. We struggled to have a minyan for Yom Tov or other things. Now it's not even a question. They're there every day, literally. Every morning, and Shabbos is just davening and whenever needed. And
we always thought that the way to get people to come is through some hot chicken soup, but you're saying it's through a stipend. That's the way you get people to come. All right.
It used to be hot chicken soup. Yeah, it used to be.
Is this your shul? Is this room your?
This is the inside of our shul, correct?
That's amazing.
And it is the old shul, which was once the shul. Built in 1914.
Wow. And
then taken away by the communists in 1927. It was turned into a pharmaceutical lab. And then in 1982, it was abandoned and literally destroyed from top to bottom. It was left with walls. There was no roof, nothing. And in 1999, the government finally gave it back to the community on condition that they rebuild it. Wow. Which was an incredible task. So in 2004, when I came, we began construction, and in 2005, we moved into our shul.
That's incredible. I saw a lot of older people in that learning. I saw one younger man there on the side. I'm going to ask a specific question. You don't have to answer it. Because of the staunch communism that took place specifically in Sumi, were there a lot of Jewish men that didn't have a bris, that all of a sudden learned about a bris and wanted one? How would you facilitate that?
Or didn't want one.
So could you speak about that?
That is one of the main mitzvahs that we try to encourage men to do. and there's a moel who travels from city to city, and we make a list of people. Every city has a list of people who are willing or want to, and we just put them on the list, and then eventually when the moel gets around to coming to Sumi, we will call everyone up and say, next week the moel is going to be in town. Are you ready? Are you willing? And we make that list and decide if the moel needs to be here for 1 day or 2 days or whatever it is. And we've had many men who have made a bris, done all types of things.
Would you say over 50 or over
15? Oh yeah.
How many?
Yeah. I'm not counting, but yeah, there's at least over 50.
Wow, amazing. Is it mainly a older community that you cater toward?
Yeah, we are here. Mainly, we're in an older community because the younger community is leaving, pretty much. So over the past 15 years, we've seen a lot of turnaround. And part of our, I say all the time, part of our success is our failure. So as soon as somebody starts to keep Shabbos or kosher or wants to send his kids to a Jewish school or anything of the sort, the first thing that comes to mind is I need to move to a larger city in Ukraine, or I need to make Aliyah and go to Israel. Or a lot of Jews also choose to go to Germany because they give a lot of incentives, and there are now large Jewish communities in Germany run by Chabad as well, who are originally from Ukraine and Russia. So we do have, I would say, proportion-wise, we are much more geared for the older community, but we do have a preschool. And Sunday school and after school program for children.
Is this a women's?
That's not strong. This is our women's kollel. They meet once a week, not every day. And mainly it's like a parsha. I don't know if you guys have JLI.
Yeah, we do, and we also my wife does a Torah and T, but it looks like
Torah
you
have
a similar attendance to your learning for women as we have
That's
here.
what, yeah. So this is our Torah and T club.
Wow. Is that your daughter
and,
on the top left?
My daughter on the top left, my wife next to her.
Amazing.
And then there's another daughter in front of her and a little tiny one on the side, if you could see.
That's amazing. So is your wife very involved in the community and the needs of the?
Absolutely, yeah. My wife is involved in with the women and with the kindergarten.
So is this like the Shabbos candles you were saying?
Okay, this is woman, and we're going back to the KGB. Okay, so
make a story.
I'm sorry, this is part of my history. So you want to hear the history? We got a call one day from a woman who says that her neighbor is Jewish, and her husband recently passed away, and she's alone. And does the Jewish community have anything that they can do to help, to do something for her to keep her company? Because, she's her neighbor and she wants to help. So my daughter went with, my daughters went on Friday to light candles with her for Shabbos. And she's 90 years old, very fluent in Yiddish, which is extremely rare. We have a handful of people in our community that speak Yiddish and not so well. And she asked my daughter if she speaks Yevreish. And my daughter understood that she meant Yiddish, and she's like, sure. And they're speaking in Yiddish. And my daughter calls me and she says, you won't believe it, this lady speaks fluently in Yiddish. And I'm like, oh, interesting, and fine. And then she's leaving, and she says Shabbat Shalom, which is and the lady was like, huh, what? Says good Shabbos. Oh, good Shabbos. And then in Yiddish she says, there's still Jews that keep Shabbos. So my daughter says, yeah, of course. And we just lit candles for Shabbos. So she says, what are you talking about? We got rid of them years ago. Jews that keep Shabbos, they're batlunim. I don't know how you translate that. They're
good for
lazy,
nothing.
huh?
Yeah, good for nothing, lazy.
Yeah, good for nothings. We got rid of them years ago, and it was getting late before Shabbos, and my daughter has to get back home, and she's like, oh, whoa, 1 second, this is getting interesting. And she says, no, what do you mean? My father is the rabbi in the city. And she says, rabbi? Are you kidding? Klei Kodesh? These are terminology that you read in the history books of Jewish life in Ukraine. And she's like, no, what do you mean? How could your father be a rabbi? He's a rabbi is a shlemazel. And my daughter's like, no, my father, and I'm sure he'll come and speak to you. And she's like, no way, no rabbi is coming to speak to me. It's not happening. Okay, fine, we'll speak. Okay. And she runs back home, and she's telling me, you won't believe it. This lady's like convinced that Jews don't keep Shabbos. We got rid of those Jews years ago. So I said, okay, we have to get to the bottom of this. We have to meet this lady. So the next week we made up that they're going to go back again on Friday to visit. She refused to have the rabbi come to her house. So my daughter went again, and I said, try to ask her more questions. You got to find out what it's all about. And she calls me on the phone, and she says, here, why don't you speak to my father? Speak to him on the phone. And she says, no way, I'm not speaking to anybody. I don't speak on the phone, let alone to a rabbi. So my daughter says, okay. So, and I hear, she puts the phone on speakerphone, and she's asking this woman, how do you know Yiddish? And she grew up in a Jewish home in Kanatop, which is a very Jewish city, not far from Sumi. And she went to a Jewish school where she learned in Yiddish, all elementary school. And then when she graduated, she landed a job with the KGB office in Sumi. And they basically hired her to be a translator from Yiddish to Russian, which she did very well. For 35 years, she worked as a KGB agent to translate documents, letters, whatever it was, correspondence that was being intercepted from Yiddish to Russian. And she was sold on the idea. She worked for the sector, for the Jewish Communist Party, and she was sold on this idea that religion is opium for the nation, and we need to, any Jews who are observant in any way need to be imprisoned, and et cetera, et cetera. And she was convinced that we did the job, and she's still living in those times. Completely coherent, spoke everything clearly, very fluent Yiddish terminology that I hadn't heard in years. It was sending chills down my spine. And finally, my daughter convinced her that I would come on Sunday to interview her. And I guess it must have been really scary for her, because when I came on Sunday to interview her, she was no longer there. She had returned her soul. And I made a Jewish burial for her. She merited to have a Jewish burial, something that she probably would have not had we not heard about her, or this wouldn't have happened. And I'm still curious till this day to hear all the rest of the story. But these are the type of people that we encounter here, that we deal with.
That's a crazy story. I'm getting the goosebumps just hearing that.
That is Sumi, Ukraine. That's a symbol of our Jewish life here.
Your Pashat saving neshamas one at a time, reaching out, making a difference.
Absolutely. Now this lady made the bracha on Shabbos candles twice, 2 Shabbosim. Isn't that what it says? If you keep two Shabbases, then Mashiach comes.
Wow.
So she made the bracha on Shabbos candles, 2 Shabbases, and then literally on Friday she was coherent, speaking like nothing, as if no issues at all.
Amazing. I'm going to ask you 1 or 2 final questions, and then we can wrap up. For you, it's already getting late. Although if you're a true Levitansky, midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning.
We're starting our day.
Do you? I'm going to ask you. What do you do for mikvah? Do you have a mikvah?
We built a mikvah. We had for the first 2 years we traveled to Kharkov, and people travel to Kharkov, which is a 3-hour drive, and it's not an easy drive. So we started building a mikvah. It was one of the times when I really saw blessings come out of nowhere. I only announced that we started building a mikvah. I sent out a letter. It was on the web. I don't even know how people saw, and donations were coming in from all over, literally from all over the world, from people I've never heard of and haven't heard from since. Like, just, they wanted to take part in building a mikvah there, and within 2 years we have a beautiful mikvah.
Amazing. I'm inspired because I live in a beautiful area called Marin County, and we still don't have a mikvah in our city.
Marin County.
So you're inspiring me to get working.
Yeah, get going. It's a good thing.
Some of the beautiful comments are, I have tears. I can't believe what I'm hearing. This is truly sacred work. There's some really beautiful. Someone's asking if you're going to write a book. Quite an amazing story, remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel? Are you happy and fulfilled in Sumi? Do you wish you were somewhere else, or do you see your lifelong there?
Before I came out, I mentioned that I spoke with my father. He told me that I'm not so crazy. I shouldn't think I'm so crazy. One of the things that really, I knew where I was going. My wife didn't know where she was going to, but I knew where I was going to. When I was in Kharkov, as a student, we traveled the Shtetlach, and we spent Shabbos in different cities, and I knew where Sumi was and what it was pretty much. And it's different. It's a very small community. You're dealing with a few people. You're not dealing with crowds of hundreds and thousands. So it could be challenging and difficult at times. You start to think, what am I doing here? I'm I didn't do anything with anybody today. I'm just sitting, especially when you have Corona, and people aren't leaving home, and you can't go visit people in their homes, etc. And my father told me something then which sticks with me. It's actually a very central concept in Hasidic teachings, which we find all over, but people just overlook it. And he said, in spiritual life, there's no big and small, because spirituality is beyond dimension. It's beyond time and beyond space. So one mitzvah that one person does has the same capacity, the same impact as 1,000 people who are doing that one mitzvah. If you can inspire one person, then that's just as great and just as inspiring as inspiring the 1,000 people somewhere else. It's an interesting concept to think about. Many times, you think, I don't have a minyan. It's only, 5 people came Shabbos morning. I don't know what it's like by you guys. And what? So we won't have minyan on Shabbos. But the truth is, so that you don't have a minyan, you can't do certain things. Certain parts of the davening aren't available, so you do the other things that you can do. And every one person is an entire world. So if one person came to shul and one person is davening, that's why you're there. That's the whole purpose of you being there, to inspire that one person. And that really is something that keeps me going, keeps the drive, so to say. If I'm able to get one person to put on tefillin, it's great. That's worth the whole thing. And obviously there's so much more, because there's more than one person, and there's more than one day.
Rabbi Levitansky, amazing. As you're
I'll,
saying, your father actually in Santa Monica, I used to help him in 2003, 2004 on 3rd Street Promenade by the Santa Monica Pier. I used to help him with Hanukkah and give out menorahs and the menorah lightings and the concerts. So that was really thousands. And to see
right.
his son working on the individuals and the neshamas one-on-one in Sumi is absolutely incredible. On behalf of our community, I would like to, I'll communicate with you through WhatsApp after, and maybe go on your site if that's okay. But we'd love to participate in your community's growth, and not just the mikvah, but other things. So I'll give a donation on behalf of our community. And just, you're inspiring just to hear. We would
My
love
pleasure.
to participate in your mitzvahs that you are doing in Ukraine, in Sumi. It's powerful and really, really, really special.
Appreciate that. Okay. We have a few more minutes. I'll leave you with another story.
Please.
Very powerful story.
Sure.
You want to know the power of an individual.
Love it.
I'll try to shorten it. It's a very long story, but I'll try to shorten it. When we started our men's kollel, this learning club, 6 years ago, this was just after the war began between Russia and Ukraine. So there were a lot of things that came together, where people lost their jobs, the economy was hit very hard, people didn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Just like Russia invaded the Crimea, they could just as easily walk over the border into Sumi. And we're 40 kilometers from the border. The Russian airplanes were flying. I didn't need the European Union to monitor and tell me that their airplanes were in Ukrainian airspace. I could see them flying over, doing maneuvers. So it was very intimidating. People were really, really under a lot of pressure, and we started this program where people would get a stipend, and people were signing up one after the other. And it was like within a month, we had 15 people who committed to come every morning.
Wow.
And to me, that was like, I was shocked. I was floored. I didn't have that many people coming for anything, with a commitment. So this one person walked into the shul. I never seen him before. And he comes and he wants to speak to me. And he lays out his documents on the table. He spreads it out in front of me, and he makes a family tree. People prove that they're Jewish with documents here. One of the things that communists did also was they documented everybody. And people if you were Jewish, it said Jewish in your passport. So if your mother's passport says Jewish, there's a 99.9% chance that you're actually Jewish. So people go to the archives and they try to find birth certificates or documents from their grandmother, great-grandmother, to prove that they're Jewish. This man comes and he lays out his family tree of documents, and he said, and everything is Jewish, 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 all the way. His mother's 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 father, his father's mother, his father's mother, and their parents, everybody's Jewish, which is very rare. It's very rare. Intermarriage, where I am, is extremely high. We're talking 90% and more. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I was sure that he's coming from Donetsk, Lugansk, which is where the war was really hit hard, and many people were fleeing from there, coming west or north towards Sumi or Kiev. And he's like, no, I'm born in Sumi. I live in Sumi. I'm from here. Like, where are you? 10 years I'm here already, and I haven't seen you. What? That doesn't make sense. Everyone's Jewish in your family. It's like, yeah, but I'm not. I don't have anything to do with this. So okay, so how can I help you? he says, well, I'm planning on immigrating to Germany, especially now because of this whole thing. I decided that, I need to move to Germany. And in order to move to Germany, one of the requirements from the consul is that you need a letter from the Jewish community that you are part of the Jewish community, because part of their incentive to have it's basically paying back the Jewish community for what they did during the Holocaust. So if you can prove that you're Jewish and you're part of the Jewish community, you get all types of social services, etc. So okay, fine. It's not the first person to come to ask me for this letter, and I said I'd be happy to give it to you, but I don't know you. I can't just give you a letter. You have to be part of the community to get the letter. So he says, okay, so what do I need to do? He said, so you need to come. We just started this new program. You'll come every morning. You'll put on tefillin, and you'll learn. And over over a few months, I'll get to know you, and I'll write the letter. So he says, no, it's not happening. I can't do it. So why not? He says, no, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I'm an atheist. So I said, okay, I didn't ask you what you believe in and what you don't believe in. I said, come in the morning, put on tefillin, you'll sit and learn, and that's it. You don't have to tell me if you believe or don't believe. I didn't ask you. So he says, no, but I am an atheist, and I'm being honest, and I just can't come to a religious service. I'm going to be a hypocrite. So we went in circles for about a half an hour. And he saw he wasn't getting anywhere. So finally he said, okay, you know what? Fine. Let's make a deal. And I know that I'm not in. I'm doing this just for the paper. That's it. I just want my paper, and that's why I'm coming. And we're clear on that. We're just being honest. And I'm telling you right now, I promise you that I am never going. I'm not becoming, observant or a believer or anything. So I said, okay, fine, deal made. So he puts on tefillin for the first time in his life right then and there. And then he starts coming every day. It turns out that he's not just everyday kind of guy. He's a writer, a brilliant man. He understood most of the topics that we were learning and different philosophical things. He was coming up with questions left, right, and center. And always excusing himself that, I'm sorry for being the critic, or I'm sorry for coming up with the question. And I was always, no, we welcome all questions. And this was going on. And I'll just give you one quick example. We were studying in the portions of the week, we came to Vayikra. So the third book of the Torah, which begins with sacrifices. And it's not a very easy portion of the Torah to explain, especially to people who have never opened up the book in their life, and start explaining about different sacrifices and different things. So we were learning a talk of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, where the Rebbe explains the meaning of the incense that they brought in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple. And the Rebbe explains that there were 13 or 11
ingredients,
different spices, and each one represents a different type of Jew. There was one of the spices, the chalbana, had a horrible smell. And the Rebbe says that this represents a Jew who, in spirituality, is so he reeks so badly that he distances himself from everybody, because he doesn't feel that he can come close, even because he smells so bad from anti-religious life. And the Torah says that even the chalbana needs to be included in the recipe of the incense. Without it, it's not considered a keteris, it's not an incense, and it's actually punishable by death. And the Rebbe explains that this is because the Jewish nation is open to everybody, and we have to include everybody. Even somebody who considers himself so far, the community has to try to get him to come in and include him, because only then is their blessing with everybody united. So he jumps up and he says, I got it. This is about 2 months after he started coming. He says, I'm the chelbana, I'm that spice. I'm that Jew that smells so bad. And that's why you insisted that I come in, because without me, you don't have a community. And these types of comments were coming as we went along. To make a long story short, at the end of the year, we had a class about Yom Kippur. This is a year had gone by, and we were learning about Kol Nidre. From Rosh Hashanah, we say the prayer of annulling the vows, and then on Kol Nidre we again say the Kol Nidre, which is literally annulling the vows that we made of the past year. And we had a whole week of learning about what it means to take a vow and how to annul a vow and why we do this for Rosh Hashanah, for Yom Kippur. Maybe Rabbi Landa will give a class one time about this. And then on Erev Yom Kippur, just before Yom Kippur, this man comes to me and he says, I need to speak to you. I want to tell you something that only you will understand. So I said, okay, go ahead. He says, tonight is Yom Kippur. Tonight we're going to read the Kol Nidre. And I want you to know that when I read the Kol Nidre tonight, I am going to be annulling a vow that I made that only you know about. So I want you to know that I'm annulling the vow. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Which vow? So he says, you don't remember when we met a year ago, I promised you that I would never believe. So I want to annul my vow tonight, Yom Kippur. And this is a Jew who eventually started keeping kosher and Shabbos. And by the time he got that letter and moved to Germany, he's putting on tefillin every day, and he's part of the Chabad community in Germany.
Amazing.
But that Yom Kippur, I must tell you that Kol Nidre for me was very moving, only knowing about his. So I leave you with that story. You can touch the one Jew and change an entire life just by mistake, or nothing is by mistake, but just because he wanted to. Before he left to Germany, he actually made like a party, a goodbye party on Shabbos by the Kiddush, and he spoke and he said, I came here thinking that I was getting a letter from the rabbi to move to Germany, but little did I know that I was getting a whole life experience, which I'm taking with me to Germany. So
amazing, Rabbi Levitansky. This is a great way for us. It's still Sunday morning or Sunday early afternoon, so it's a great way for us to start our week. You really inspired us. Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.
Rabbi Levitansky. It's really appreciated. And for the rest of the community, we have tomorrow evening a positivity bias class. That's at 7:30. We have our Tanya class on Wednesday morning. Tisha B'Av, Wednesday evening, we'll do Tisha B'Av under the stars. On Thursday, we'll do a Zoom video. And next Sunday, we'll actually be interviewing and learning about the Jewish community and the Chabad rabbi in Cambodia to honor his time zone. We'll be doing it on Sunday evening, which will be his Monday morning. So we'll continue our tour. Rabbi Levitansky.
Send him my regards.
I will, Rabbi Butman. I'm sure you know him. Awesome. All right, thank you so much, Rabbi Levitansky. You're really a
Seid
special
gesund, enjoy.
rabbi.
We should meet with Mashiach very soon.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi Levitansky. Shavua Tov, everyone.